So, My Hero Academia is on break this week, so you know what that means. Another My Hero Academia Team Up Missions review! And we're gonna get right into it, right after this intro. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Man Drew, and I'm here to talk to you about My Hero Academia Team Up Missions, Chapter 3.1, titled, Who's Prince Charming? And when it comes to this chapter of the Team Up Missions, yeah, we're actually not going to be having any focus on Deku whatsoever. I know, shocking! For the past 2 chapters, we've been having a heavy focus on Deku and his Team Up mission, but in this chapter, we're actually going to be focusing on 3 different characters, and one of them is probably one of my favorite characters so far, so I really enjoyed this chapter when I read it, and hopefully you will enjoy this chapter as well as this review. And before we get more into the review, I'd like to ask you, if you haven't done so, to subscribe to my channel if you like My Hero Academia content, if you like chapter reviews, discussions, and the spoilers from My Hero Academia, subscribe to my YouTube channel. And without the way, let's get right into the chapter review. So, when it comes to this chapter of My Hero Academia Team Up Missions, we are actually focusing on 3 main characters, technically 4, and to an extent 5, but 3 main students in My Hero Academia, and the 3 students are Iida, Momo, and Takami, aka Suneater, and we're going to be focusing on their team up mission with Fat Gum, as well as we really won't see Deku in this chapter at all, except with this one cover page. So yeah, when it comes to this chapter, we do focus on Momo and Iida. They're finally properly being introduced to Fat Gum, but before they're actually introduced to Fat Gum, we get kind of the setup for this chapter and what this chapter is going to be about, because we see that some villains are attacking some random civilians. They're like a combination of like fish people, octopi people, as we see this one girl who was like in this crowd of people. She gets caught, she falls down, and she's about to be attacked by a villain, but she sees this one man that she basically becomes smitten with. As now we fast forward to where we see Iida and Momo being introduced to Fat Gum. They introduce themselves. Momo makes a connection with Fat Gum because they both have quirks that rely on fat, and how they are both looking up to Takami as their leader because he is one of the big 3 at UA, which is very unfortunate because he's a shy individual. As we get the setup for the chapter, as we see that girl once again come in after they've made their introduction with each other, introducing herself as Hime, as she has apparently made a request to Fat Gum to look for the person that basically saved her as her quote-unquote Prince Charming. So for the most part, when it comes to this chapter, it is basically a searching for a particular individual. The main individual is the person that this young girl has been smitten with, as Fat Gum refers to as a tyke. But what's very interesting, and if you can follow this type of story before, you could probably guess where this is going to, especially when we get towards the middle of the chapter. You can pretty much pinpoint who the person she's looking for is, but it doesn't really tell you outright who she's looking for, but there are hints to it throughout the entire chapter. So it's very interesting to see it if you can actually point them out. So yes, once she introduces herself and she ask Fat Gum and the rest her goal, which is to find her Prince Charming, they basically try to inquire about what she is looking for, or if she has any details on the person that she's looking for. Unfortunately, she does not. All she does is refer to him as my prince, and that she finds him very attractive, as well as we do get a fun interaction between her and Takami about how she thinks that he's very scary and stiff and wimpy, and you know, it's Takami, so she's not necessarily wrong. So from there, they go out onto the road. They go and look for surrounding hero agencies in the area where she was attacked to find the potential Prince Charming. And she does find the prince, as we get a cameo of Todoroki Shoto in this chapter, where just make sure that Shoto is a very handsome boy and obviously would make all the ladies swoon for him. And this young girl is no exception, where she says, "Oh my gosh, he's a prince!" But it's not her prince. And for the most part, that's pretty much how it goes. They go from hero agency to hero agency, getting to know or getting to see whether or not the people there are Prince Charming. There is a funny scene here where they say, oh, if it's not Shoto, there's someone else with Shoto, as we get to see Maineta walk out, and they're like, I know it's probably not him, but we probably have to ask, is it Mineta? And she just says, as if. So, you know, obviously it wasn't going to be Mineta, but it's, you know, it's just a funny scene to, you know, harp on Mineta. But yeah, from here on out, we just see them going around. We get familiar faces. We see Aoyama. We get to see Ojiro. They get to have snacks. We also get to see random heroes as they check out all of the hero agencies around the area. And they pretty much come up short. And we do see something very interesting and very comedic throughout this entire chapter. We see that Hime is feeling tired, and before she can really ask for a break, we have Momo already making a chair for her, as we once again see Hime complaining about how she wants to see her prince, as she's complaining to Tamaki, that's his name, I've been saying it wrong, Tamaki, about how he should be trying to help, and how he's supposed to be doing this and how he's supposed to be doing that. And because Tamaki is very shy, he does his Tamaki thing and just leans on the wall in gloom, as he also looks at Iida and Momo as like beacons of hope and beacons that are radiant, and how she should be looking towards them. Once again, Tamaki just harping on himself more and more, trying to put himself down, eventually leading to him basically building himself up in the eyes of Hime at the end of this chapter. So, you know, it's following the same thing that we've seen with Tamaki before, how he keeps putting himself down, but he's eventually going to show how capable he is later on. And once again, we do continue on in this chapter trying to find her princess, as we come upon another group of familiar faces. As they say, we have another agency to go to, and we find out that Monoma is here as well, working in a hero agency, weirdly enough, with Kaminari and Bakugo. And this is great because their interactions that they have together are just priceless. They just hate each other to a T, and it's just so great to see them, their back and forth with each other, them both being very snarky and arrogant and hating each other, as we get the confirmation that it's obviously not them, and how they do have something in common. Both Monoma, Bakugo, as well as Kaminari have something in common that is very familiar to Hime. She says, yeah, my prince, there's something between them that they have in common, and I can't really put my finger on it, as we have Iida saying, of course, they're both talented. Also not referring to Kaminari as talented, but what is even more ironic is that Kaminari is like, yo, you didn't have to say it like that, but probably we're all blonde. Maybe that's the similarity that we have. And then Hime responds with, oh, he's blonde. That's the one thing that I forgot. And then after they gain that piece of information, she leaves, and she probably has the funniest line in the entire chapter as she's leaving, as they're all leaving, Fat Gum, Momo, Iida, Tamaki. She says, Hime says, bye-bye BFFs, and they're like, what? No! As from Bakugo as well as Monoma. So, you know, that was just a funny scene. And from here, this is where you can probably get the confirmation of who the person she is like swooning over is, especially coming from Tamaki, who's like beginning to put things together as he remembers, oh, this person was at the incident, they're blonde, they must have been on the scene, as we have him basically come to the conclusion of who it is. And while he comes to the conclusion, we have Hime, who's so worried and so like concerned about the fact that she will never find her prince and that she will never be able to meet the person that saved her, as we have both Iida as well as Fat Gum as well as Momo trying to comfort her, trying to make her feel better, as Tamaki comes to the conclusion of who she's looking for. But Tamaki, really enough, is the one to put Hime at ease by saying that he's promising that he's going to reunite her with her prince. At the same moment this is happening, however, he immediately gets attacked by the same villains that we saw at the beginning of this chapter, the octopus gang, with like the different like individuals that have most likely octopus-like powers, which, you know, you could probably foreshadow that they were going to happen again, as we saw Fat Gum eating a lot of takoyaki, which, you know, contains octopus. So a lot of what happens in this chapter is tied together within it, which is very good. What I really enjoy about these team-up missions, about how small things in the chapter tied together, not necessarily with the entirety of My Hero Academia, but at least within the story that they are trying to tell. So yes, once again, we get to see these octopus guys, we get to see Tamaki in action, we get to see Suneater doing his thing. He takes charge, he asks Momo to create him a type of scarf, as well as telling Iida to get everyone to safety, as he's able to block the ink coming from these octopus men as he goes into his fighting mode, as we have Fat Gum beginning to also join into the battle and telling Hime about how when it comes to Suneater and when it comes to the worst case scenarios, that is where he persists, because when it comes to Tamaki, as we also get to see Fat Gum taking blows and blows from these villains, he's taking all of these attacks, he's absorbing all of these impacts, as we get to see Suneater, as we have Fat Gum declaring that Suneater is the hero that is so dark and powerful enough to devour the sun itself, as we see Tamaki, Suneater, throwing these octopus guys into the air using the octopus tentacles, like I said, tying into the fact that Fat Gum was eating takoyaki, which has octopus in it, and is something that we know Tamaki will most likely eat to use his powers, throws them into the air, as we get to see Fat Gum one-punch these villains using up all of his fat reserves, as we get to see Fat Gum in his low-fat version. And then from here, we get the end of the mission where Hime latches on to Fat Gum and says, "I finally found you, my prince," as everyone is surprised about it, except for Tamaki, because he's the one that figured it out. As we also have Fat Gum saying, "Wait 1 second, the prince you were looking for was me?" As we have both Momo and Iida saying, "Who are you?" Because yeah, they don't know what Fat Gum looks like in his low-fat form, because he's always the big husky form. So it's just fun to see that comedic moment as we cut towards the end of the chapter, as we get to see Fat Gum once again trying to eat up as much takoyaki as he can, as well as we get more confirmation about how when it comes to Suneater, when it comes to Tamaki, from both Iida and Momo, how they really do look up to him and how he was able to take charge of the situation and was able to do all of this in the midst of combat, showing that he really is a true hero that can take up a leadership role. You know, he just has to be a little bit more confident in himself. And that is even something that Hime says as well, is that he is someone that is also radiant, and that he's so radiant that he can eat the sun, but he just has to make sure that he's not so mopey. As we have Tamaki's like, "Yeah, it's just the source of my suffering, but you know, what are you to do?" As we end the chapter with Iida and Momo witnessing the true power of one of the big three, as we're going to be awaiting for the next team up mission. So yeah, that's pretty much all we have for this chapter. I really love this chapter, mainly due to the fact that we get to focus on a lot of characters that don't necessarily get a whole lot of focus in My Hero Academia proper. I mean, we do have small moments with Iida as well as with Momo, but we rarely get them together, as well as we don't really get to see interactions of other characters with other characters in Class 1A. Like, we don't really get to see Shoto as well as Mineta interact, and it's just very fun to see Bakugo and Monoma interact, as well as we get to see a few cameos from other characters from Class 1A and what they're doing during their team up missions. So just overall, I just really enjoy team up missions because it gives us stories in character interactions that we rarely get to see or don't get to see in My Hero Academia proper, because My Hero Academia at this moment is going more into the bigger and grander plots and is not focusing on the smaller interactions between the students, and most of those interactions have already been established. But it's just fun to see more of those interactions in these side stories. As well as when it comes to the main plot of this story, I will say that once we get towards the middle of the chapter, you can probably tell who the person she's looking after is, or the person that she's looking for is. But it's very cool to see that not only do we figure it out around the same time, but we also have Tamaki, who also figured it out around the same time. And even though we may have figured it out a little bit earlier, he still was able to like get a kind of read of who she was looking for, especially when the evidence was dropped, which made it very apparent who it was, not just to the readers, but to Tamaki himself, because we both know who Fat Gum is, and we both know about his low fat form, but neither did Iida or Momo. So it's very interesting to see that interaction and that dynamic between the characters in the plot, as well as the connections to Tamaki, as well as Fat Gum eating takoyaki, and the octopus villains, and how they later come back at the end of the chapter. All of it just ties together in a very neat bow without any more explanation that is needed, and everything is pretty much condensed into this one chapter. So it's a self-contained story with a beginning, middle, and end, and it all pretty much ends great. So yeah, that's all I really have to say about this chapter. A lot happened, and I was able to wrap it up within a shorter amount of time than the other chapters, but hopefully you enjoyed this chapter, hopefully you enjoyed this review, and if I haven't said this before, please go read My Hero Academia team up missions. I think they were really enjoyable. If you like to see smaller slice of life stuff in My Hero Academia like myself, these are just great stories to read, because not only do they add a little bit more character development and growth to characters that we really don't see a whole lot on screen, but it just shows fun interactions between the characters as well, and that's kind of what I enjoy about My Hero Academia, along with the fighting and the action and the villains and the other characters. So yeah, go read My Hero Academia Team Up Missions, and I'm pretty sure in the near future, I believe next year, we're going to get a second volume sort of kind of this, and I can't wait to have those stories come out and review them as well. We only have 2 more stories left in this chunk of Team Up Missions, so I may spread them out a little bit more, but hopefully you can't wait to read them and watch them and watch me review them too. So yeah, that's all I really have to say about this chapter. Hopefully you enjoyed it, hopefully you liked it. If you did, leave a like down below, leave a comment down below. What do you think of the Team Up Missions? Do you like them? Do you dislike them? Leave your thoughts down in the comments down below, as well as subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit that notification bell to be notified for whenever I upload more videos. Do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I can catch you in my next video. Goodbye!